Welcome to another edition of Ask the First Selectman. I'm Jim Cameron, and our First Selectman, John Zagrodzky, is literally standing or sitting by awaiting your queries. If you have a question for the First Selectman, we'll tell you how to submit that in a moment. But John, the first question deals with Great Island. It's been almost 2 years since the town acquired the property. And as you know, there's a certain frustration with people not having access the way they'd like. But also there are some new regulations regarding dogs on the island. Could you just bring us up to date on what's happening with Great Island?
Sure. Let's first talk about dogs. So one of the things that we tried to do was make the island as available as possible to people who have dogs. And the philosophy there is that this is a dog town. I think there are more than 2,000 dogs registered or licensed with the town clerk, and maybe a few that aren't. But dogs play a big role in our town, and lots of families have them and would like to go out to places like Great Island with their dogs, and we get that. At the same time, there is also a view that these dogs should be on leash and should be controlled. And that's something that's been consistent with all of our parks and public properties for a long time. Dogs on leash is what really the vast majority of people feel is the right answer. So, in exchange for allowing dogs on Great Island, part of the discussion with the Great Island Committee was to say, look, if we're going to do that, we really ought to have some kind of enforcement mechanism to ensure that people are going to follow whatever the final regulations end up being, particularly with regard to keeping your dog on leash. So we initiated an effort to clarify the fines that the town can charge in that instance. We actually did not have anything in the town ordinances that specifically said you could fine someone any substantial amount for having a dog off leash. So the Board of Selectmen approved an initiative to create such a modification to our ordinances to allow that. That process proceeded through the RTM, and they did finally approve levying a $100 fine if someone has their dog off leash when being on leash is required. We're waiting right now for the Parks and Rec Commission to take up this same potential fine for all the parks properties. But the belief being that it's actually pretty important for us to have consistent regulations across all of the town facilities, whether they're parks or not. And so I think Parks and Rec is meeting, well, I can't remember when they're going to discuss that, but it's soon. And my hope is that they'll approve that so that we'll have a consistent fine structure for dogs off leash across town. I would say that we're going to take a gentle approach to this enforcement. I think most people are of goodwill and recognize the importance of keeping dogs on leash, not only to control them, but also to prevent others from potentially getting hurt. Some dogs are dangerous or can be. And so I think most people will say, yeah, that's a reasonable regulation and we'll do that. But the fines are in place if we need them. If we find that there are substantial numbers of folks who have elected to disregard that rule, then we might actually start to try to impose fines, not in the spirit of collecting money or raising revenue, but in the spirit of just trying to get people to comply with what we think is a reasonable and frankly longstanding expectation in town, which is that dogs should be on leash.
Will there be any education of people about the new dog regulations? And just a quick follow-up question as well, too. I've heard reports that there are cameras on parts of Great Island that are taking video to catch people if they're breaking these regulations. Could you speak to both of those?
Sure. So, with regard to dog regulations, there is a Great Island Committee meeting tonight, May 28th, and they're going to be talking about those regulations. So, I don't know that the fine structure has been finalized, but I don't know that they have fully decided on the regulations they want to recommend for adoption by the Board of Selectmen. So, that is a little bit in flux. So, the minute that that gets finalized, just because it's a hot topic, if you will, you and I will sit down and we'll have a separate video that says, all right, here are the final rules for dogs. Let's march through them and make sure everybody's clear on that. And I'll let you know when we're ready, and let's sit down and have another one of those sessions. As far as cameras on Great Island, it's absolutely not a police state. There are a few cameras in a few spots. Frankly, I don't even know where they are. Well, I take that back. I know there's one in front of the front door at the manor house, but there's a few here and there just for purposes of keeping everybody safe and making sure that if there is an issue or a problem, that our Parks and Rec and Public Works staff can take care of it. But it's not, the island is definitely not covered with cameras. There are a few out there, though.
John Zagrodzky is our first selectman, and if you have a question for him, send it along to us and we'll ask it on your behalf. Just email us at dariantv79 at gmail.com.